Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So today I'll be diving into two powerful forces in game design, which are smart UI UX and meaningful game feels. Together, they can transform your game mechanics into truly memorable experiences. So, UI UX isn't just about pretty buttons or clean layouts. It's about giving players confidence from the first tap, especially in hyper casual game where the first tap is the most important thing. Game feels aren't extra fluff either. They're the emotional sparks that actually turns routine actions into moments that players remember. So these ideas are actually not limited to just one genre. It actually applies to multiple different ones, whether you're building a quick hyper casual title, a deep RPG, or anything in between. Clear interfaces and satisfying feedback are the universal keys and engagement. So our aim today is quite simple. It is to help you equip with practical principles so you can design a game that not only players enjoy in the moment, but return to again and again. And over the next few minutes, we'll be exploring intuitive UI UX, the game feels, putting it all together. So let's get started with the UI UX best practices and core principles. Right. Let's begin with the foundation of a great mobile game design, intuitiveness. When players launch your game, they should feel immediately at home, no manuals, no choreographed tutorials. First and foremost, control must be effortless. We should aim for one or two finger gesture, simple taps, swipes, or pinches, rather than forcing the player to faster and elaborate multi-touch combos. And every extra motion actually risks creating friction, and friction kills engagement. It's like asking a new driver to perform a three-point turn before letting them even hit the accelerator. And doesn't make sense, and neither does overcomplicated input in your game. We should always leverage conventions that everybody already knows. When a button pulses, it usually means player taps. When an element slides, that means swipe. And when things zoom, that means pinch, right? These are all muscle memory actions baked into every smartphone users. And by reusing what's familiar, you eliminate cognitive load and let your audience focus on the fun and not decoding on the controls and tutorials. Yeah, as you can see in this little GIF that I've posted here, this is a type of hyper casual game where you put the pizza or the cakes adjacent to each other. But the thing is that as soon as the game starts, it only takes about 1 second to give you a clear understanding, of how the game works. And then you just dive right into it, right? So these are the type of things that you should be aiming for. Next is the instant feedback, right? Instant feedback is what makes a tap feel powerful. If player act, click, tap, and nothing happens right away, they might doubt the game. Sometimes they might even think the game is bugging or something's clearly wrong. And feedback links action to results. It tells player, yes, your tap works, or nope, try again, or do something else. Without that clear signal, they might feel lost or frustrated. Fast, obvious feedbacks build trust and keeps energy high. And there are actually three key layers of feedback. Two of which are the most important. One of them is the visual, the other is audio, and the third, it's quite a bit optional when it comes to hyper casual games, it's haptic vibrations. On visuals, tiny animations like color, flashes, pop-ups, they are key things that indicate a success or a failure. Buttons that press in, cards that shake, scores that pops, these are all visual indicators that player can see instantly. And as for the audios, clicks usually click sounds usually goes for the tap, things for the wings, and thuds for the mixes. So it's very important to have sound label for different types of scenario and cases. For example, in cases of victory, celebratory, failure, progress, and sometimes you might even need a different sound label for in-game menus. As for the haptic, it's basically bridging the digital with the physical. A quick buzz turns a digital action into something you feel. Use short, sharp vibrations for hits or longer pulses for big wins and celebrations. So once you blend all these layers, every action gets a clear and satisfying answer. So the key takeaway here is make feedback instant, clear, and layer. Visual, audio, whether it's haptic, miss anyone and you might risk player confusion. But if you nail all three, a player will feel very connected to the game, improving their experience, and they might just keep playing. Next, on the principle is the clearness and consistency of the UI UX. Now, on mobile, and especially in hyper-casual game, less really is more. Because with hyper-casual games, the core loop is quick and fast. Every extra button, icons, or pop-up kind of steals the attention from the fun. Our rule is if it doesn't help play, then you should just cut it. Every UI element needs a job. So you should be asking yourself like, what does this do for the player right now? How does this help? If the answer is weak, it is generally a good idea to remove it or hide it under another layer. So basically, fewer buttons equal fewer decision, which equals faster flow. Having cleaner screens reduce mistake, confusion, and cognitive load. This clarity will focus on the core loop and the gameplay and not on hunting for what to do next. And it's in games like Candy Crushers, they tend to have, even though they are hyper casuals, they tend to have some sort of evolution when it comes to UI and UX. It's very, very important that you shouldn't drop a full interface on the player at once. You should gradually introduce new buttons, new enemies, new bars, or new elements into the game. Teach one thing and let it stick while the player gets familiar, then add next. And it's very important to keep the fonts, the colors, and spacing consistent. Same blue means the same action, same font size signals the same importance. And consistency becomes a visual language that your player learn fast and trust. So Candy Crush really nails this. They usually, at the start of the game, they start with a simple board and a couple of clear buttons. But as you move forward, new UI pieces start appearing, boosters, timers, special modes, but they're layered in step by step, not overwhelming them. And player never feels buried in menus, and they stay locked in on the match 3 core games for hours and hours. One key takeaway is strip the UI to its essential, add complexity slowly, and keep your look consistent. Do that, and player will glide through your game with fun and without friction. Moving on to next is trusted patterns and clear CTAs. Player comes in with habits shaped by other apps and games. So they know what a gear icon means and expect it to open to settings. To meet those expectations, you should have a habit of using icons and symbols that are already understood. Gear icons mean settings, hearts for lives, coins for in-game money, and stars or trophies for achievement. Now, when you reuse these standard visuals, player will spend less time guessing and more time playing. And next is highlight your call to actions. Buttons like play, buy, or upgrade must stand out. Look into the color contrast, choose a button color that pops against the background. As you can see here in the example, low contrast can make it be hard to read, whereas high contrast can help you understand the menu really quickly. You should make the habit of using clear action-driven words for labels like start game and not vague things like go. And yeah, a bold will label button guides players to the next step without hesitation. In short, when it comes to trusted pattern and clear CTAs, it's good to tap into the familiar UI patterns and make your key action shines through and keep the navigation simple. Do this and player will flow through your game with confidence, no guesswork, and just fun. There are a couple of UX challenges when it comes to mobile games that we need to solve today. What we'll be looking is 3 of the big ones, making your game fit to different screens, improving touch controls, and handling interruptions, and share easy fixes, right? First of all, screen comes in all shapes and sizes, as we've covered yesterday, from small phones to big tablets. It's very important that the game interface must be able to stretch or shrink without breaking. You should be anchoring important buttons and menus so they stay placed no matter what the screen size. You should use flexible layout, use relative sizes or percentages instead of fixed pixels for each breaking points. Now, another thing is you should try to test through a range of devices from cheap phones to top-end phones and tablets. Sometimes emulators are not enough. Bugs can kind of like hide on real devices. And if your button ends up off screen or overlap, player might get frustrated and leave. Now, the second thing I want to point out is the touch controls. Touch controls must be easy. Fingers aren't quite precise, unlike a digital pen. So we need to make life simple for the players. We should have different, we should keep the button size and the thumb zones indicated here in the second image by green, yellow, and red indicates the easy to reach zones. So you should keep this in mind and put important controls and at the green zones and do not put important ones at the very top or edges. Visual hints make buttons look clickable, use shadow, highlights, or small animation when pressed. If player miss tabs or feel unsure, they might not enjoy the experience and might quit it quickly. And the third one is mobile interruptions. Right, third is mobile players getting interrupted. These happens especially when it comes to like hyper casual games, and sometimes especially in a competitive scene like Goama Orange tournament platforms. Whenever you get calls and messages, it can be annoying. So what you should consider to add into features to help prevent these are having some sort of functionality where the game auto pauses the moment they leave and save their spot. Although it might be a bit difficult, I'm not sure how the vibe code works, but it is something good to have. And of course, orientation support. If you're allowing both portraits and landscape, it must be make sure to the layout must be adjusted cleanly. And if you log on one mode, you should be telling the players clearly through different visible prompts. Next is it's the checklist for coders. It's a good idea to run through this checklist before you actually complete your game and then look through different testing, get these right, and your UI will generally feel very clean, fast, and player first. Now that we've covered the UI UX, I want to shift to game feels, right? The emotional juice that transform your game's mechanics into a memorable experience. Now, the hidden magic is that elevates play from routine to remarkable. There are subtle sensory and emotional touches that transform simple game mechanics into lasting memories. Now, game feels are the juice. They turn buttons, presses, and joystick moves into emotional engagement. As you can see here in the left side, there's a lot of sensory feeling and intuitive and prompts coming out. They're not fluff, they're essential. So when you hit a target and see a burst of particles or glow effect, or hear a crisp chime, or maybe just feel the screen vibrate, you know that you have succeeded, right? And if you don't see it, you might get confused. This sensation, however, lodges itself in the brain as satisfaction. So let's break down these into a few building blocks. One of them is the micro interactions, which are tiny flourishes, button animations, ripple effects, hover state, which offer immediate feedback. They whisper, yes, you did it right. You're on the right track. This reinforces your action. And next is the visual confetti, triumph audio cues, progress bar that snaps into places. They turn achievement into celebrations. A well-timed fanfare can actually help double your sense of accomplishment. And emotional designs, moments of surprise and delight, like as you can see here, once you match a whole bunch, you get twice the score. These hidden sparks actually delight into the player or the character, and it forges unexpected connection. You cannot underestimate these. They remind us that games are experience and not chores. So consider a simple match 3 puzzle like this. You swap 2 tiles and they vanish. But if that swap triggers a cascading chain reaction completed with glowing trails and rising score counters that rings like a bell, it feels really, really powerful. So you didn't just move tiles, now you just orchestrated spectacle. This spectacle propels you to try again, play again, which actually helps improve retention by players and gameplays. Yep. So without these sensory cues, the games will feel flat. People will lose immersion, motivation, and ultimately quit playing. As you refine your next title or games, you should be asking yourself, where can you add these extra sparks? And what micro interaction could surprise your players? How will you reward the moment and celebrate it? If you focus on these touches, they're sure to make a difference between a forgettable game and a very memorable game experience. Next is enhancing player engagement through flow and challenge balance. Right. Now, what is flow? Flow occurs when a player skill matches the game challenge perfectly. If the game is too easy, boredom sets in. I've played plenty of games that are so easy, and I stop playing within like 5 seconds. But if the game is too hard, it could also drive frustration and drive them away. So your goal is to land squarely in that sweet spot for every player. It's difficult to achieve this, but once you do it, it's a miracle. Let's examine the extreme, which is the bottom, right? Overly simple mechanics with no escalations. If you're doing the same tap mechanics over the same screen without any improvement, difficulty, or challenge, players will definitely get bored. On the other side of the spectrum is frustration. If you make the game so unforgiving, difficulty spikes or steep learning curve, player will quit before they grasp the basics. So you should try to avoid this by turning challenge to player ability. So the easy answer to this is having aggressive difficulty as your primary tool. You begin with core mechanics at low challenge, then as player master each skills, you should introduce a new twist like faster enemy, tighter timing windows, or additional objectives to help make the player grasp the challenge gradually. This gradual rise keep them in the flow, always learning and never getting overwhelmed. And the next thing is to combine these challenges with responsive control to ensure every input feel precise and immediate. With the satisfying feedback, the hit should ring with crisp audio cues and visual flourishes. And then if you top it up with some more meaningful rewards like celebrating a success and animations, score multipliers, or even unlockable content or characters, these elements will invite motivation to continue the play. It's very important to balance these moments with brief respites. Casino games, slot games tend to do this very well because unlike hyper casual games, there isn't really that action involved. So they actually add a lot of visual cues, animations, audio cues to keep the user glued to the game. And of course, there's also the gambling effect. Once you consider a good game that does all of these things, we should consider how it actually does it. It steadily ramps up obstacle speed, complexity, and at the same time, when you get into a high stakes goal, they insert a calm seek. Like as you can see here, they show up with a power up that lets you get into a jetpack or a huge bounce, which kind of like offload your cognitive load, right? So the games are designed to avoid overwhelming the player. Right. Next is, well, I'm gonna be closing. So one of these are the four summaries and the key takeaways. So one is intuitive UI UX. Better you have to think in mind to craft simple, clear interfaces so players feel confident from the first step. And you should be optimizing the mobile to adapt layout across different devices, fine-tune touch targets, and handle interruptions smoothly. And you should also be polishing the game feels, add small animation, add crisp sound, a rewarding effect to make every action a satisfying one. You don't really have to go all the way like casinos games or slot games where everything is just covered like visual cues and sound effects. But it is very good idea to add these small animations to get feedback to the user. You should also balance the flow and challenges. If you make it too difficult, you might discourage players. And if it's too easy, it might get boring. So if you master combining all of these things, you're already quite ahead in creating and designing a very, very good mobile game that feels natural, has a delight effect on every play, and keeps your audience coming back. Yeah. So thank you all for attention. If you have any questions, I would like to welcome them.
Guy, that was an excellent presentation. I do have a question on the SDK. So you had a bit about automatic pause when a call comes in. I'm wondering, does the platform handle that if the game is hosted with us?
Do you want me to take that one, Kai?
Yes.
It's part of the SDK, the pause event, but the game has to support it as well. If someone moves away from having that browser window at the front, it should pause the game. The SDK will do that, but that event has to be matched in the gameplay.
Okay, got it.
Sorry, I'm not very technical.
No problem. And then the other, I guess this is more of a comment than a question, and this is great design principles if you're designing a mobile game. But I feel like, especially at the start of a platform when there's very little content, you can get away with a lot more,
Yes,
right?
yes, definitely. Because when it comes to hyper casual game, it's usually straight into the action, right? So you get away with a lot more. What I'm trying to help establish here is when it comes to visual cues, it helps elevate the game experience. The games like Endless Runner, when it comes to hyper casual game, they tend to have a progressive difficulty that reaches, because like you play Endless Runner, but if you're playing the same route with the same difficulty, it tends to get really boring really fast. So when it comes to these, it's very, very important to add visual cues and have aggressive difficulty. What I'm talking about is the flow, right? So what generally what you want to do is keep your user, even though it's a hyper casual game, you want to keep the user at the edge, right? So you want to have, it should be like a roller coaster experience where you're running down, you get excited, and then when you get back up, it's a different feeling, right? So it's a play on the user adrenaline, and even though it's hyper casual, I believe that it will come in very handy if you design a game in that sense.
I just want to impress on the participants here today that you can also work on your game. You can release an initial playable version with maybe not so many bells and whistles. And we can already start including that in tournament play. And then you can get feedback and continue to improve your game. You don't necessarily have to wait until it's fully polished like some of the games Kai's has shown us. Although if you can, the better. Because once more developers start submitting content, then it'll be about who has the better game. And then your game, which might do well in the beginning, might not do so well when you're competing for the time of more games.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, Phil, it comes down to the data as well. I think Kai can speak to how much he relies on data to iterate and improve and get better. Like Kai was saying in his presentation, it's hard to find that sweet spot. And then based on the data, it's possible to make those tweaks in further iterations of the game if you're seeing drop-off point after 10 seconds because of a certain event, or if you're seeing that when you tweak this. So it's constantly looking at the data and iterating to really nail it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think with that, I would also want to add that it could be pushing the limit of what coding can do when it comes to like creating games. Every time someone creates an awesome visual or cues that might be seen impossible at first, but I think it will help push things and advance the coding community when it comes to creating very intuitive games.
Yeah, for sure. Although as the tools improve, maybe that becomes easier as well. Or you guys just have to be really creative. Are there any questions from Christian or Koke?
No questions from me. I initially had a question about the pause on, the question that you asked, Phil, about how
Yeah.
the game can be paused automatically. But you've already answered that. He's already answered that question, so no more questions from me.
Okay.
Just on that question too, I think tomorrow's session with Kunal, he's going to go through the technical elements of the SDK, and he can go into the specifics of where in the API and how you can call that from the game. Kunal will be able to answer that in that session. So make sure you come and tell all your friends.
Yeah, it would be really helpful if you found any of this useful, if you could let them know in the WhatsApp group so that we can get more people to attend.
Okay, no problem about that.
Cool.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm just gonna give you an example of a game. It's the same game, but one developed by a first-time game developer and another by a more established game developer, just to get you in the mode of thinking of ways to improve your experience. And Kai, or Peel or even Lala, please feel free to chime in. So this was a game developed by Raymel and submitted to the Vibe Jam, and it's a 3D. Hold on, again with the sound. Hold on. How do I kill the music on this?
I think you can right click and then mute that tab, and
I
then
think I already muted it, actually.
mute
I,
tab.
I
Oh, okay.
I took out there was a little speaker icon.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. You see, there's a very large map that doesn't actually need to be there because it serves no purpose. It actually distracts from the player being able to recognize the playable space.
Yep.
And the other thing you'll notice is it's extremely hard to tell where your piece actually is on the grid because there's no clear indication. I don't want to turn this on because it's too loud.
I think you're muting the wrong tab. You should be muting Tetris Neon Twit, not the Cubris. You
Oh,
muted the
right,
wrong
right,
tab.
okay. There doesn't seem to be a mute button here either.
Yeah, you click on that. Yep. And then yeah,
Mute tab. All right.
it worked.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No worries.
So it's extremely hard to tell your piece is, right?
Yeah. And I think the control white guide, I think it could use a bit of improvement. Usually the up, down, left, right arrow keys mimics the
Right.
one on the keyboard, right?
Although it does have keyboard controls. I can't tell if I'm over it or not. But then if you look at what Mythical City did with Hubris, they confined the space and then they added this shadow. So you can tell if it's falling on another piece or not. And then the other thing he added was the ability to rotate the space. So this is just an example of, even though it's the same game, just these little tweaks like adding a shadow and confining the game space, it's a much improved experience. So you want to try to find these things in your own builds.
Yep, that's a very good use case.
I think that's actually it for tonight. Unless you have any questions. We were hoping these sessions would be a little bit more interactive, but we also understand if you're internalizing all this.
Yeah, it's more like a learning session than interactive. I think if we have any questions, we are going to ask it anyway, but most of the information we are getting is new. So I guess we have to internalize it first before any interaction.
Koke, are you working on anything new yet? Or are you just looking for tips to improve Citrus Runner?
I'm actually looking to improve Citrus Runner. It's my first game, so I want to use that to learn a lot about game development before I build another game.
Okay. Are you finding these sessions helpful?
Yeah, they are actually very helpful. Today and yesterday, I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before. Like the user experience, the way to think about building your game. I didn't know those things before. Like what he said about Subway Surfers, where after a lot of when you get past a hard stage, there's a relief of a few seconds,
Right.
maybe 10 seconds, where the game slows down a bit and you get a little bit of relief before more obstacles start coming. So it was really helpful.
Yeah. There are two use cases that comes up into your mind just to help you. So this is why whenever you play a game and you are about to enter a boss battle, it kind of like slows down. The boss comes out slowly. It doesn't seem obvious, but game designers use that opportunity to slow down the pace of the game so that, because if you put harder on another hard situation, on top of another hard situation, it goes crazy. And the other thing that you can incorporate into some of the hyper casual games is having a bonus round, right? Where you don't have any negative triggers. So you can still play the game fast paced, but not so seriously, right? So these are just two examples that I could come up with.
You do accomplish that in a way with your magnet.
Sorry?
Sorry, Koke. Koke, I think you accomplished this in your game in a way with your magnet because you get to rest a little bit when you don't have to chase the coins, right? And the coins are coming to you.
Yeah, I thought about that also. I think I did that, but it can also be improved a lot. I think another game that does what Kai said excellently is Piano Tiles. A few years ago when I played Piano Tiles, there was a stage after the first or second round where you can basically just hit on any keyboard and whether you miss a few keyboards, then you are not going to fail. It's like a bonus round before it gets serious again. It was actually a good experience. It was a very good experience then where you had to rest because Piano Tiles was a really fast game. So I think I get your point.
I think at some point, Kai, maybe we could, once people have something to show, maybe we can have the developers present their games and we can give them feedback in real time.
Yep, that'd be cool, actually.
Yeah, that would be really, really helpful because I would need the direct feedback on my game to know exactly. This is a lot of information and I still need to process it, then try to figure out how it fits in within my game. But if I can get the direct feedback, that would be really helpful and it would help me move faster.
In its current state, it becomes a game of endurance. It doesn't change a whole lot during the game, and it's very hard to die. Failure should also be a consideration in your game. There should be failure mechanics as long as they are, as long as they don't feel bad, you know, like you can quickly start a new game. I don't know if there's other failure principles you're aware of, Kai.
Well, I haven't actually seen the game yet, so I'm not sure if I might be giving the right answer. But this is usually when it comes to failure, there is a certain criteria that punishes the user when they get to a certain score or level where it gets immensely hard. But the thing is that I don't want to encourage that because, like I said in my session, it is the way you drive failure, put that onto a player is through gradual difficulty. So I think you might need to adjust your difficulty scaling, right? From the conversation, from what I'm hearing, it becomes a game of endurance. You need to put in a bit more element to ramp up the difficulty after a certain timer count or maybe certain level or certain distance travel, right? So that's just on top of my head. I hope I answered that correctly. Yeah.
Actually, would you want to share your game with Kai
I mean, right now,
if you want?
I would love to do that, but I'm not on my computer right now. I'm actually
Okay.
outside of.
The alternative is I can share it on screen if you'd like.
Of course, you can do that.
Okay. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yep, we can see it.
So I'm guessing it's a tap game where you tap.
Hold on. Mute site. Here we go. Yes, it's a spacebar tap.
And then you collect, you avoid obstacles.
Yeah, that's what it is.
The thing is,
I think
you actually
there's a bug
lowered
in
the difficulty, right?
Oh, okay.
You actually lowered the difficulty because I remember you used to have these stacks of boxes that would go almost to the ceiling. There was a small gap that you would have to go to the extreme to avoid.
Yes, I had that, but I thought about it and it didn't make sense because if I stack the boxes so high, it makes the player always want to elevate to the top, which I think it's not really good. I wanted to make it a bit more enjoyable by separating the stacks. This is not my end product. I hope to break up the stacks. So sometimes a player can pass through from the downside of the boxes instead of always going up. The player can also go down. So many ideas didn't come to, didn't make it into the product, but I still want to improve it going forward.
If you want to avoid, I think something that could be enjoyable is adding go for the for higher skill level players. You can try to drive players to getting better skills through accuracy, And then one way that I would do is maybe introduce the concept or like elements like a ring of fire, where you get bonus points if you pass through the rings without dying. It's sort of like a high risk, high reward type of situation where it encourages the player to try and challenge themselves with a reward as an incentive. That also helps with your difficulty scaling, where the game doesn't become a game of endurance, right?
Thank you.
The other thing that might be worth considering is power-ups. So like increasing the speed. When you increase the speed, you obviously increase the difficulty, but people like it because they move faster. So it's a surprise and delight moment, but meanwhile, you're changing the difficulty.
Power up boosters are also one way to go. If you put vertical boxes from top to bottom, it would become a Flappy Bird. If you want to avoid that, that's fine. But if you want to go for something like a Flappy Bird game, that is one way to introduce vertical columns. That could also add to the challenge, right? And also consider adding more obstacles as time goes on. Like adding, usually right now, the interval between the columns are very, very large, right? But as you progress, I think it's a good idea to add a bit more, add a bit more obstacles on top of them, gradually. So yeah. These are just some.
Because
Thanks.
that's actually
Thank
part of
you.
the fun, Koke, is narrowly going through different obstacles. Like when you had the boxes from almost to the ceiling and you just had to get through that tiny gap. Like that was a really satisfying moment for me.
Yeah. I can give you an example, like in Need for Speed. Need for Speed games are basically street racing games, right? There's a concept called near miss, right? Where you drive your car very closely to another car, and you get bonus style points, right? This is how they encourage the user to do something risky, and then, but at the same time, all these style points and everything makes you look cool. So which actually encourage you to do it. So what you can do on top of that, you can add like I said, like I covered in the earlier session, you get like some sort of visual cues that are satisfying, double the points or something like that, add a bit of visual cues, and then I think it might work very well.
Remind me, Kai, in Need for Speed, like when that moment happened, it slowed down for a second, right?
Yeah, it's like you're in a slow-mo
Yeah.
version, and then they add some sort of trick to it, like when you do that, it actually gives some sort of visual prompt trigger. But yes, slowing down, giving you more control of the car for the handling. There is sort of like a reward element attached to that risk.
I think you can drift more if you do it. It ties in with drift, I think.
I think it's been a while, but yeah, there's a couple of risks
Yeah.
and reward tied to it. But I mean, you get the idea.
Thank you guys for the suggestion. I'll put that into consideration. Thank you so much.
No worries. Happy to help.
Christian, I don't know if you have a game that you're working on, but we're happy to give you feedback as well. I don't know if you're actually ready for that though.
I'm just starting to build a game, but I have a web app. It's not related to any game. It's a business application.
Okay. Well, if it's vibe coded and you stick it on vibe coding list, I will definitely give you feedback on there. I think we can wrap it up. Thank you, Kai, for a really enlightening talk. Those were excellent points that we could all learn from.
It's my pleasure. I'm very happy to be of help to anyone. Thank you.
And Koke, thank you for being brave enough to allow us to critique your game.
I'm so happy that you guys gave me feedback. Thank you so much.
I think it's a really cool game. Personally, you're really on the right track. It looks amazing.
At some point, I may ask you to explain how you put in your custom graphics because not a lot of vibe coders, even myself, don't know how to put in the custom graphics. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
We'll
Thanks, everybody.
see you tomorrow. Guys, get on the WhatsApp group and let everybody know that they should be attending these things. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks, guys.